Hi, my dear friends. I hope you are well wherever you are. My name is Hussein Mashayikhi, and this is another session from our Unreal Engine course. In this one, we're going to learn how to import our objects into Unreal Engine from a variety of softwares like 3ds Max, Revit, and SketchUp. Even if you're not working with 3ds Max, I suggest that you watch the first part regarding 3ds Max, and then in the latter part of the video, I'm going to talk about how to do the same with SketchUp. So stay tuned, make sure to watch the 3ds Max part, and let's go. So I'm going to start by hiding the roof on this project, okay? By the way, this is the scene that we're going to work on for the remainder of this series, and we're going to do different things like lighting, material, and other stuff in this scene. So we're going to be working here a lot. Now, the first thing that I want to tell you is that ideally, when we want to import our objects into Unreal Engine, we have to do it, or it's better to do it in an optimized fashion. And by that, I mean the number of vertices that we're going to import should be as reduced as possible. I know that, with Nanite, we get the ability to, have so many objects with so many vertices, and that's true. And also Lumen, if turned on, could help. But whatever we are trying to import could be imported in a more optimized fashion, and that is ideally what we have to do. Even if we have a high-end system, a very powerful system, it would be better if we got rid of some of the vertices that were like excessive and extra, and nothing would happen to our project. So for example, if you look at this wall, we have so many vertices here in the back, and nobody sees them, nobody's going to see them. So if I get rid of them and delete them, nothing's going to happen to my scene. It's not going to affect my scene in a negative way in any type of fashion. This thing is going to help me have less vertices and work on my project with more ease. All right, now let me give you another example. Look at this oven. Look at all these vertices that we have here. Now, it is possible for us to reduce the number of these vertices by the Pro Optimizer modifier that we have here. Pro Optimizer. So we have Optimizer and Pro Optimizer, I think, here. Yes. So if we select that and click on Calculate, we can reduce the number from 100 to a lower number, and as you can see, the number of vertices are reduced. And if you want to keep the texture, make sure that you have this keep texture option checked. So that's very important. So if you don't do that, it's gonna mess up your unwrap for that object. So you can use this optimizer for your scenes, and later on, because we're going to in our lighting sessions, we're going to work with Lumen on, and also we're going to do baked lighting. So we're going to do both of them, and so don't worry about that just yet, because when we are working on Lumen, we're going to explain everything. We're going to explain all the tricks. Also, when we are baking the lights, again, we're going to explain everything. So right now, don't worry about this stuff just yet. Now, as you can see, all my walls are separate. So I'm clicking on them one by one, and you can see that they are separate pieces, and they're not, one piece. And that has been a conscious decision on my part. I've made these separate, as you can see, these top parts too. And it will be better for us, for our walls to be a little bit more thick and not this paper thin. And we can achieve that by the shell modifier. So if I find the shell modifier from this list, okay. For example, we can put 0.1 and use that amount for our shells, but I'm not going to do that just yet, so let me delete it. I'm going to take this into Unreal first and see if I have any problems. If I did, I'm going to use this shell. All right, the process of importing our objects or a whole scene into the Unreal Engine can be very easy, and it can be done with a few clicks and a few keys. But there are more complicated ways, more sophisticated ways that I'm gonna explain a little for you first. So we're gonna do that first. By the way, all these objects that you can see in this scene, they have been purchased. I've modeled this scene myself, and I've used also the Corona render engine, and I've bought most of these objects, almost all of them. So everything that you can see here has been purchased from 3D Sky, the website, and been put here for one reason or the other. For example, even this object, you know, this object that you can see, this box, the carpet, the chairs, and everything. So I'm gonna start trying to import this into Unreal. So I'm gonna open Unreal first, and in the meantime I'm gonna select this piece of furniture, this chair here, and I'm gonna go to File and Export Selected. So since we only want to export this little piece of furniture, we have to use Export Selected. If I wanted to export the whole thing, the whole scene, I had to use Export. So I'm going to use Export Selected. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to give this a destination, for example, on my desktop, and I'm going to call it 01, and I'm going to use the FBX extension and save it. So I'm going to get this window that we're not going to bother with. All these options, they are outside the scope of our work. So, and we're not going to use this method a lot. So don't bother even, you know, reading what's in here. So I'm going to hit OK. We're getting an error, and the error says that the materials have been made with Corona, and it could have been V-Ray or anything else. And FBX extension is not able to be completely imported without any problems into Unreal. So that's basically the gist of what is happening here. And by the way, FBX is a very common extension for SketchUp, Revit, 3ds Max, and most of the frequently used 3D software, and it's a very useful one. So the only problem here is that the Corona materials or the V-Ray materials doesn't really make a difference. It cannot be transported properly. So they're going to use the standard material for them. It's okay. We're going to go back to Unreal, and I'm going to make an architecture blank sample template. I'm going to use that. So I'm going to create one. Okay. And if your GPU or graphic card supports ray tracing, you can have the ray tracing option checked, and you can search the name of your GPU online to see if it supports ray tracing or not. And it doesn't really matter whether it's AMD or NVIDIA. Just search for the name of the model and search whether they support ray tracing or not. All right, now let's get on with our process of importing the object or that piece of furniture into the scene. So the first thing that I want to do here is to go to my content browser here, and I'm going to make a new folder for this object. For example, let me just make a new folder here. I'm going to call it 3D model. Okay. Now I'm going to go inside it. Sorry, let me just go inside it. Inside it, I'm gonna do a right click and select import, the top option. So I'm gonna choose that FBX object. Okay, now I get this window. If I want to use this method or the FBX extension, this is fairly important. The only two options that are important for me is whether I want to use nanite that we previously talked about and collision. So if we enable nanite, we can have a lot of objects similar to that piece of furniture in our scene without our actually scene getting a lot heavier. So if I want to use that piece of furniture a lot, I can use nanite. And collision lets me have a solid object. So for example, when I go to the game mode, and I put this into game mode, that piece of furniture cannot be penetrated, we cannot go through it. Okay, it's going to be a solid object. So I'm going to keep those checked. The rest of the options are not that important to me. You know, they're not that relevant, so we don't really need to bother with them. And I'm gonna click on import all, and that's it. We're gonna get this message again. It's not important. We're not gonna bother with it. It's not gonna affect anything. So we select clear and close this. Now, where is this piece of furniture? Where is it? We cannot see it. So remember, I'm trying to tell you how to do it the hard way. So I'm going to go to the content browser. You can see that it has been imported into my folder 3D model. I have two objects, one the static mesh, and you can see some information regarding the static mesh, as you can see, I have these numbers, these values about the static mesh of my object, and I also have a material. So I have a static mesh and a material. So I have these two files here. If I double click on the material file, I go to the slate, and you can see that I have these two windows, and it says that I have this white color linked into my base color. So I have a white color for my base color here, and I'm going to close this. It says, do you want to save it or not? Doesn't really matter. I go back and I select on my static mesh. Let's see if I can here. Okay, now here this gives me the chance to make a few minor changes to my object before using it here. Okay, so don't worry about these black patches too. We're gonna take care of them. Now, to put our furniture into our viewport, we simply drag it like so and put it here. Okay, now it ends up somewhere else, and as you can see, the gizmo is not close to the object. And why has this happened? Because when we are trying to import an FBX extension object, we should do it properly, and let me show you what I mean. So if I go to 3ds Max, you can see when we imported this object, the gizmo should have been here on the 00 coordinate, but it wasn't. It was there. So if we want to import this properly, we have to put this object in the center, 00 coordinate. And then if I go to file and do another export selected again, now for this one I'm going to use 02. I'm going to import this one similarly. So let me just get rid of all of that. Now I don't want to do the whole import thing all over again. I want to re-import this object correctly instead. So I'm gonna use that furniture, that piece of furniture in my content browser. I'm gonna do a right click on it, and I'm going to select re-import. Okay, re-import. And I have two options here. If I had saved this file on the previous file, for example, let me just show you. If I go to export and use export selected, and I'm gonna save it on the 01 again and hit OK and get rid of all of these windows. If I select re-import now, you can see that it gets done very fast, and this time correctly with the gizmo in the right place, it gets re-imported into my scene. So this is what happens when we overwrite an object and save it onto itself. So let me show you the other way, the other option. So if I make an object here, for example, this is a sphere. Let me just delete the other one. You know what? I'm not going to delete the other one because we may forget to put it back. So let me just do a few Control Z's, get it where it was. And instead of that, I'm going to make a teapot. So I put it in the center, make a teapot. Go to file again and select export selected. I'm going to call this 03. And okay. So let's go to Unreal. Now pay attention, this time we shouldn't use import because it's another object and we saved it in a separate file. So instead we're going to use re-import with new file. So we're going to replace that piece of furniture with this file 03, which is a teapot. We're going to get this message, it doesn't really happen that frequently. It's regarding the materials, it's okay, and get rid of that. And you can see that the teapot has replaced that piece of furniture. And again, don't worry about the dark patches on it. We're going to get rid of that. I'm going to show you how. All right, now we learned the first method, which was the rather difficult method, and it's going to be very frequently used in our work. So re-import and re-import with new file. These items, these options, we learned about them as well, useful ones. And we're going to work on them later on. Now, if I make a couple of copies of this teapot and go to my content browser, you can see that I have one object, but 3 instances or copies of it. And let me just show you something. So if I change the material somehow, if I change the color for this material, for example, let's choose this color. You can see that it, let me just save it. It gets applied to all the instances or the copies. Let me do something else though. So if I click on this teapot, right click on it and use duplicate, okay, make a duplicate of it here and call it something else. if I put it here and then make copies of this new duplicate, let me just do that. So I'm gonna make 2 more copies of it. All right, now if I go back to the first object, the original one, and change something about this object, the material, let me just, for example, uncheck the nanite support. So if I uncheck that and save it, okay, and close this, go back, so you can see that the first 3 changed. They don't have their spots or the patches, the dark patches on them, and they're not, nanite supported again. But the next 3, which were copies of the duplicate, did not change. So remember this, if you want the changes to be applied to all the objects, you can make copies, but if you don't want the changes to be applied to all the objects, make duplicates instead. Okay, so remember that, it's going to be very useful. So let me just delete these extra teapots. Now we learned about import. How do we export something out of here? For example, this teapot, if you select it, go to file and use export selected, we can select a name for this and a destination, and we're going to use FBX again and export this out of Unreal very easily, for example, to Blender or other software. All right, now we learned about the first method of importing some objects into Unreal, and we really use this for when we want to select a few objects or a small scene into Unreal. For example, this one, let me just get rid of these, and we're going to export this scene too. So we select it and go to file and export selected. Okay, we're going to select desktop as our destination and name this 04. So again, we used FBX as our extension. So we click on OK on all of these windows, go to Unreal, go to our content browser, okay, and make a new folder. For this one, we're going to call this 3D model 1, for example, and then we open it, and inside we do a right click and select import, and then we select the 04 scene. This time I uncheck nanites. I don't want nanite, but I have collision checked, so I'm going to show you that as well. So I select import all and wait for it to be imported. Okay, I get all these messages, which could usually be errors about the UVs, unwraps, materials, textures. We clear them and close this. Go to our folder, and you can see that all these files and static meshes and materials have been imported into this folder for us. And you can see all the objects in that scene have been separated into different files with different material files, and everything is here. But we cannot this time just put them inside our scene one by one. That would be very difficult and very hard to do. We cannot just put everything here and check the location, and it's just a mess. And this is one of the problems when we are using FBX as our extension when we are importing stuff. So we're going to do something here. I'm gonna select all the static meshes first. So I'm going to click on the first one, hold down shift and click on the last one, so everything in between gets selected as well. So I select all of that, drag it inside my viewport and put it here, and that's it. Let me just increase the speed a little. Okay, let's go inside. All right, so again, we imported this scene, this whole scene into Unreal, and this was the method that we used for this scene, but it's not an ideal method. So I have to, for example, take care of the windows, delete these so that the light can get in. All right, but we're not going to use this method that often. And this method that we just learned has its own problems. For example, if we had left out a piece, we wouldn't have known and it would have been problematic. So we're going to do something else. Before that, let me just completely delete these folders. 3D Model 1, I'm going to right click on it and delete it from my content browser. And there, delete. I'm going to do the same with the 3D model folder as well. I'm going to delete that too. Okay. Now everything's gone. We are back into our viewport. All those folders and materials are gone. The next method that I'm going to introduce to you is using a plugin called DataSmet to transfer Corona or V-Ray materials very easily with a few clicks. And using this plugin, it will be better. Again, it will be ideal if we did not just select everything and transferred everything in one move. It will be better and more ideal if we just divide our project into 3 different categorizations. For example, the walls and the floor, the carpet, and that would be one category. And then the next one could be the tables, the chairs, sofa, furniture, stuff like that. And at the last one, we would just transport the plants, the paintings. Again, we can select everything and just do a complete transfer. But the problem with that is sometimes it gives us a crash. Sometimes we would have problems and we're not sure what part caused that problem. But if we divide the transfer process into 3 moves, for example, if we have a problem, when we have a problem, we would at least have fewer objects to investigate. For example, if we have a problem with these plants, it would take us less time to to investigate what texture or material or what is the problem rooted in. So again, it would be ideal not to just transfer everything at once. Alright, so for all these reasons and more, we're going to learn another method which is a lot easier. So the first thing that we do is to go to Google and search for Datasmith for 3D Max, for example. Okay, and the first result that we get is from the Unreal Engine website. Okay, the official website. So we open that, and this is the plugins that we get. So we get a plugin for 3ds Max, we get a plugin for SketchUp, Revit, Navisworks, and Rhino, a variety of different software, SolidWorks even. And we can just, depending on what 3D software we use, we can download the respective plugin here. So we're going to use one for 3ds Max, and we're going to use it for Unreal Engine 5. So make sure that that version is selected. Okay, so version 5, as you see here. So all we have to do at this point is to click on this download button here, download 5.0 exporter. Okay, so if we click on it, again, we start downloading it. Now I have a download manager here, which facilitates my downloads. Even if you don't have a download manager, you can just download it with your browser. And we have to, it's not that big of a file, so it's not going to take that long. If you're working with another version of Unreal Engine, you should use view at archived versions and choose the version that you are working with. For example, 4.25, 26, 27, select it here, and then again select click on download. Okay, so that's what you do if you're working with another version. They have many archived versions here. All right, now for the sake of this video, I'm going to edit this into the part that this file has been downloaded. So I have the file downloaded. All right, so it's a very easy install. Just click on next. Okay, and here agree to the terms and next. And I have 2 3ds Max versions active right now, 2021 and 2023. They have been already selected for me. So click on install, but I have already installed this, so I don't need to install it again. And after that, finish. Okay. Now, as I said previously in the first video of this series, Unreal Engine is free for our use, but some people try to install a version from third-party websites, and when they install a plugin like this Datasmith plugin, they face some problems. And this is why I say use the official version from the official website. So some people who use third-party installers do not see this Datasmith plugin after they install it. So this is one of the problems that they are going to face, or they have faced before. All right, so pay attention to that. Okay, we have Datasmith installed and ready. Now, how do we use Datasmith plugin to import this scene, this building, from 3ds Max into Unreal Engine? Okay, like I said, the first thing that we do is to have or divide our projects into different layers. And we can use this button, Toggle Layer Explorer here. And this is a very handy tool for us to, for example, have the walls into one layer, the sofa, furniture, another one, the kitchen, another layer, and the rest of the stuff inside the house. So again, like I said, this prevents a lot of problems when we are trying to transfer our objects into Unreal Engine. So I select the walls first. Let me just move it up. Okay, and I'm going to select the floor as well. Let's just select the floor. Let me just go inside, make sure that it's selected, and I select this outer part. And I'm going to make all of this into one group. Go to group and select group. Okay, and I think the kitchen has been selected or grouped with these walls and floor too, so we don't want that. Let me just ungroup the kitchen. Okay, let me just go inside and make sure that I did it properly. So I select the kitchen and I want to hide it too. Okay, all right, so let me just go back and again select these walls on the floor without the kitchen and group it. Okay, all right, now before I start, let me just tell you something. If you had in this window so many layers present, what you have to do is to just select everything, the whole project, and add a new layer with this button, this plus button, call it something, and then right click on every other layer and delete them. So again, you add everything once, make a layer for it, and then start layering that one layer. So let me just show you how to delete this. Delete layer. So you right click on the layer that you don't want and delete it. Okay, so let me just do the same here real quick. Okay, let me just make sure that everything's up to par. All right, so I'm going to delete this other one. We have everything ready here. I add a new layer and I'm going to call it wall. And after that, I select my grouped walls and click on this button here called add to active layer, like so. All right, so I'm going to make another layer. Okay, and I'm going to call this sofa, and I'm going to use it for the furniture that I have inside. So let me just hide the wall. Let's see if I did it correctly. I think I added the grouped walls into the other layer. So let me just fix that. Okay, make sure that that group is added to the wall so that we can hide it. Okay, I think I fixed it. All right, let's see, add to active layer. Yes, all right. All right, now let's just start selecting the stuff that we want. We can select all of these stuff except for the plants. So I'm gonna select everything this side, sofas, carpets, everything, and I'm gonna deselect the plants because I want a separate layer for them. All right, so I'm gonna deselect all the plants. All right, and go to group and select group for them. Now I'm going to add them to the sofa group, add to active layer, like so. Okay, let's test it. Okay, well, sofa, great. Now I need another group or layer for my plants, so I'm gonna select the plants. Okay, I'm gonna add another layer, call it flowers. Okay, I'm gonna call it flowers. So let's check everything. We have wall, sofa, flowers, working great. Now let's just add another layer, create new layer. So, oh, okay, so you see, this is a problem. I didn't want to add a child layer on their wall, but because wall was selected and I clicked on add new layer, this happened. So make sure nothing is selected here, none of these options, and then click on create new layer. So make sure nothing is selected before you click on create new layer. All right, let's make a group for our kitchen. So we select the kitchen part. Now let me tell you something. This sink that you see right here, I've used before in my previous projects. It has a million vertices, and if we import this, we're gonna get problems and errors in Unreal Engine. So I'm gonna do an FBX import separately for this one later. So I'm gonna deselect this. I don't want to have this as my layer, so let me make sure that it is deselected. Okay, now I need to add this to the last layer. Let's call it kitchen. Okay, and let's see. All right, it's working great. So sofas, and let's see, flowers, the default. Oh, okay, I have this plant left out in my default and it needs to be added to the flowers layer. So I select the plant, select flowers, and add to active layer, like so. Okay, fixed. Oh, all right, so everything has been ready except for this piece of sink that we have here. So let me just make everything ready to be imported into Unreal Engine. All right, let's open our layers. This sink piece is in my default layer. Okay, so what I do now is to just select everything in my viewport, like so, and then I go to File and Export selected. Okay, now I need to make a name for this. Let's call it one and save with Datasmith extension. Okay, save. All right, so we get this window and we click on OK, and it starts importing everything in our scene layer by layer, piece by piece into Unreal Engine. This is gonna take some time, and we may get a few error messages regarding the textures or some of the materials that we are using. It's okay, it's quite normal to get those error messages. Just click on cancel so that the process continues. And don't worry about materials. We're going to learn about materials in other videos, and the main policy for us is to just try to import everything, and when we have a problem with a certain texture or material, we're going to fix that material or texture manually. So don't worry about these error messages. We're gonna get a few here as well in a couple of seconds. For example, this one, so we click on cancel, another one, cancel again, until the process is finished. Okay, so I close these error messages and done. All right, a tip for you before you do something like this: make sure that everything is saved in your 3ds Max before you do this transfer, so that if you have any crashes or problems, everything is saved. So let's go to Unreal Engine architecture, and let's create another file. So I go to my E drive. Let me just find a folder, select this folder. I'm going to call it my project 1, for example, in that destination, and I'm going to click on create. Okay, so Unreal Engine is going to get opened for us, and everything will be placed there. Okay, so as you can see, everything has been imported. Some stuff may have been slightly changed because Datasmith usually makes some changes to your files so that they can be supported inside Unreal Engine. So some stuff may have some changes in them, and some stuff are imported intact. All right, now so let me just let me just delete this floor. Okay, and we have Datasmith here present, but if you had created a game blank, you would not have Datasmith. Don't worry about that. I'm going to show you how to make that visible. So go to edit and plugins, and in the search box write import, and then you have Datasmith importer. So make sure that it is checked. After you check it, it gives you a message that you should reset or reopen Unreal, and just agree to that. And after that, you have Datasmith importer in game blanks as well. Okay, let's get going. Let's go to Datasmith and file import. Now we get this window and we go to the folder. So we have this file called 01, which I want to load, and I also have these assets folder, and see it's empty now, and the project 1, which is my the folder that I created. Okay, so and I select the 01 file and I click on open. Now I get this window and it asks me if I want to import this into another folder, a separate folder. I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to let Unreal make a folder for it and do everything there. So click on OK, and then I get this window. And in this window, it asks me what I want to import. For example, geometry, materials and textures, lights, everything. I can select or deselect everything that I want to import. Even cameras. If I had cameras in my scene, in my 3ds Max scene, I could have imported those cameras as well. Now I don't need them right now. And animations. In advanced window, it's regarding the static mesh and the light map resolution. Again, I left these unchanged. I don't have to do anything here, so I'm going to click on import so that the importing process is initiated. All right, let's fast forward. Okay, so everything has been imported. Now I have this post-process box here that I'm going to use later on, and I'm going to explain everything in other videos. But for now, for this video, let's just change it a little. So go to the post-process panel and exposure. So let me just, it should be inside the lens. So let me just close everything. Go to lens, exposure, and put this on manual first, and then decrease the exposure with this option. Okay, so you can see everything now. That's enough. Let's just go inside the project, and here inside, let me just increase the exposure back up again so that we can see how things have gone. Okay, that's enough. Now if we go to the content browser, Unreal Engine has created this 01 folder for us. So this folder has been created by Unreal Engine. It was the name of our datasmith file 01. They created a folder for us. Inside geometry, we have all the static meshes that we have in our scene, and inside materials, we have all the materials that has been used in our scene. We have the textures folder with all the textures, and just like that, everything has been imported beautifully in our scene. You can see the pivot gizmos have been placed correctly, and just everything, all the materials and textures just beautifully have been imported here. And we're gonna work on the materials, the textures, the lighting, everything. But so far, you can see that all these textures and materials have been imported in high quality. So, and that is the second method we use. Now, if I want to find a material or texture, I select the object and right click on it and go to browse to asset, and it shows me where that asset is located in my content browser, which is a very useful tool that lets me modify my material. I can enable nanite, for example, or not. So let's just close it, and I can even export an object that I want. So I select that object, go to file and click on export selected, and then I can just export this to a destination that I want. Now let me show you something interesting. So if I go to my 3ds Max and change one of these objects, for example this sofa, this piece of furniture, so let me just ungroup it. Okay, this one, and let me just change something about it. Let me just rotate this, and okay, all right, so I'm going to export this object. Okay, export selected. I'm going to call it 02 and save it with datasmith. Okay, so I can just replace this furniture with that one, the new one. So all I have to do is just select it, go to re-import with new file like we did in the beginning of the video, and select the 02. Okay, open, and I'm going to change or replace this piece of furniture with the modified one. So let's see if there's a problem here. Let me check why it didn't happen. All right, so let me see. Let me just do this again, re-import with new file 02. So we get this error, failed to re-import. We have a problem with the static mesh probably. So let's go back to the 3ds Max. I'm gonna check this one. Let's just move it, do everything all over again. Select it. Okay, go to export selected. Let's call this one 03 datasmith. Okay, let's see. So this time I'm going to do it with the other sofa. So select it, go to browse to assets, find the asset, right click on it, re-import with new file, and let's see if it happens. Yes, this time it happens with no problem. We had a problem with that other sofa. And let me just tell you, if you do a Control-Z right now, it's not gonna change this piece of furniture to what it was before. So Control-Z is not gonna work here after we re-import this file. So let's just check the material, the quality of these textures. Looks so good. Okay, so let's just check this one. Stable, the objects. All right, so as I'm zooming in on different materials in our scene, we're going to work on the lighting in this building. We're going to work on the materials, the textures, and also we're going to learn how to and where to add our cameras. So we're going to learn all about that. But before we start that process, we're gonna have to learn about post-processing, which is very important. So if you want to have good lighting in our scene, we're going to have to learn about post-processing first, and that is going to happen in the next session. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video.